Her hand shook as she set down the broken file on his glass desk, but her voice was steady when she whispered, "I can fix this." He laughed, cold, dismissive, never knowing those words would shatter his world forever. The city skyline glowed like fire at dawn, each tower rising like a monument to ambition. At the very top of the tallest one sat Adrian Vance, millionaire CEO, ruthless strategist, and a man whose name alone could sway markets. He leaned back in his leather chair, scanning the reports flashing across his screen. The numbers were high, the deals profitable, the empire secure. And yet, as silence pooled around him, he felt nothing. Adrian's life was polished steel and glass. Penthouse suites, gleaming cars, endless meetings where people laughed at jokes he never told because they feared him too much to breathe wrong. Power surrounded him like armor, but inside, he lived in a desert, dry, unfeeling, and barren. He kept it that way because it was safer not to feel. Feelings, he'd once learned, could destroy. He stood and looked out at the city far below, thousands of tiny lights blinking against the early morning haze. His reflection in the glass stared back, sharp jaw, silver cufflinks, immaculate suit. A man who looked untouchable. But even he couldn't escape the truth he felt only at moments like this, the hollow ache in his chest. On the other side of the city, in a neighborhood where cracked sidewalks told stories of long neglect, Sofia Alvarez tied her hair back with a worn ribbon and tucked her mother's lunch into a bag. The apartment smelled faintly of soap and boiled coffee, a smell she had always associated with home. Her mother coughed softly from the bedroom, and Sofia's heart clenched. She balanced two jobs, a student trying to finish her degree at night, and a daughter by day, working alongside her mother in one of the city's largest corporate towers, cleaning floors others never noticed, dusting desks of people who would never know her name. It was tiring, sometimes humiliating work, but Sofia carried it with quiet pride. Each paycheck was a promise, food on the table, medicine for her mother, and maybe one day, a chance at the dream she had folded away in journals no one ever saw. Their worlds couldn't have been more different. Adrian, suffocating in abundance. Sofia, holding warmth despite scarcity. On a rainy evening, fate pulled them under the same roof. Sofia walked into the glass tower with her mother, a cleaning cart rattling in front of her. Her eyes, tired but still bright, caught brief glimpses of wealth she couldn't even imagine owning. A single piece of art in the lobby worth more than their apartment, a chandelier that could have fed their neighborhood for years. And yet, she kept her head high. In his office above, Adrian threw his pen across the desk, fury in every line of his face. His team had failed him again, a critical project in shambles. His voice roared against the walls, echoing through the pristine hallways. Staff scurried like frightened birds, none daring to meet his eyes. That night, Sofia lingered longer than usual, her mother already waiting in the supply closet downstairs. The storm outside rattled the windows, and as she passed the executive floor, she heard his voice, sharp, impatient, slicing through the air like glass breaking. She slowed. She shouldn't have. But something about the frustration in his tone, not just anger, but the raw edge of desperation, drew her closer. Her gaze fell on the papers scattered across his desk, a problem half solved, numbers tumbling in chaos. She didn't speak, not yet. She simply watched, unseen, as the powerful man clenched his fists against his temples, a picture of fury and loneliness in one. She took a breath. One choice, one whisper, and her world could change forever. Have you ever felt invisible in a room where you knew you had the answer all along? What would you have done in Sofia's place? Walk away, or step into the fire? Welcome back, my wonderful family and friends. If you're excited and ready for today's story, make sure to hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. Tomorrow, I'll be sharing another story just as thrilling, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Now let's dive right in. Adrian's office was a war zone of papers, glowing monitors, and the sharp hum of tension. The storm outside rattled the glass walls, as if the sky itself echoed his anger. His executive team stood in silence, shifting uncomfortably, too afraid to speak. Adrian's jaw was set, his eyes flashing with cold fire. This, he slammed a report onto the desk, is incompetence at its peak. Millions poured into a solution, and this is what you bring me. One man tried to stammer an excuse. Adrian's glare cut him down instantly. Get out, all of you. The staff scrambled, leaving him alone in his fury. Alone, except for the faint sound of a cart while squeaking down the hall. Sophia, pressed against the doorway, froze as his voice carried out to her. She shouldn't be there. She should have turned away, gone downstairs to her mother. But something made her linger. Maybe it was the edge in his tone. Not just anger, but desperation. His desk was littered with financial projections, coding drafts, and marketing blueprints. A failing launch. Numbers mismatched. A calculation error glaringly obvious to anyone who dared to look closely. Sophia's eyes narrowed. She wasn't an expert, but years of night classes had sharpened her mind. She saw the error in seconds. Her breath caught. Was no one going to point this out? Before she could stop herself, she stepped forward. Her voice shook but held steady enough. Excuse me, sir. Adrian whipped around, his eyes like ice. Who the hell? His gaze dropped, taking in her uniform, the cleaning car behind her. His lip curled. The janitor's daughter? Sophia flushed. I think I see what's wrong. Adrian let out a sharp laugh, a sound colder than the storm. He leaned back, folding his arms. You think you see what's wrong? My senior team, with their degrees and fat paychecks, couldn't find the issue. And you what? Pushed a mop through this office, and suddenly became an expert. She steadied herself. I study. Nights. Data analysis. And your numbers. There's a misalignment here. She pointed, hesitant but firm. He stared at her, incredulous. Then he barked a cruel laugh, shaking his head. Fix this, and I'll give you $300 million. His words dripped with disdain. Go ahead. Impress me, cleaner. The words stung, but instead of retreating, Sophia felt something burn inside her. Pride. Defiance. She pulled the nearest chair, sat down at his desk, as if she belonged there, and began scanning the documents. Adrian's amusement flickered. He hadn't expected her to try. Minutes ticked by, the storm thrumming louder outside. Her brow furrowed, fingers tracing across charts and figures. Then, slowly, she pieced it together. This calculation. She circled the figure with his pen, her hand steady now. Your team overlooked a cascading error in the back-end projections. If you restructure the data flow here, she marked another spot, the model stabilizes. She lifted her eyes to his. Calm. Certain. Adrian's smirk faded. He leaned in, scanning what she had marked. His silence stretched until it filled the room. Finally, his jaw clenched. Impossible. He checked again. And again. Each time, the truth cut sharper. She had done it. She had fixed what his entire team had failed to catch. For the first time in years, Adrian Vance was speechless. Sophia rose quietly, leaving the pen on his desk. Her voice was soft but unyielding. You asked me to fix it. I did. The storm outside broke with thunder, rattling the glass walls. Adrian stared at her, as though he'd seen a ghost. This girl who should have been invisible had just shattered his world. What would you have felt in Adrian's place? Shame, admiration, or anger? And if you were Sophia, would you have dared to sit at that desk? The next morning, Adrian arrived at the office earlier than usual, though he'd barely slept. His mind replayed the scene again and again. Her steady hand circling the error, her voice cutting through the storm like a thread of light. He hated how it lingered. It was ridiculous. She was a cleaner's daughter, a student, nothing more. And yet, he could not deny it. She had done what none of his senior executives could. But instead of admitting that truth, Adrian doubled down. He summoned his board into the conference room, wearing his mask of control like armor. The issue has been resolved, he announced curtly. A director frowned. Resolved? By whom? The entire analytics division swore. By me. Adrian cut in sharply. His voice carried finality. That will be all. No one dared challenge him. But behind his calm facade, Adrian's chest tightened. Lying to them was easier than admitting that a girl with a mop cart had outshone them all. Meanwhile, Sophia sat at her small kitchen table, textbooks spread open in front of her, but she couldn't focus. Her mother noticed her silence. Mihija, her mother said gently, stirring a pot on the stove. You're somewhere far away. Sophia bit her lip. Something happened at work. Her mother's eyes narrowed. With Mr. Vance? She'd heard stories of the ruthless CEO. Sophia nodded slowly. I help him with something important. Her mother's face hardened with worry. Sophia, promise me you'll stay careful. Men like him. They don't see us. To them, we are invisible until they want to use us. The words pricked her heart. Sophia knew her mother was right. And yet, she couldn't stop remembering the way Adrian had stared at her. Not with kindness, but with shock. She had shaken him. Still, doubt weighed heavy. Who was she, really, to step in his world? Over the next few days, the unspoken battle raged. Adrian avoided the cleaning staff altogether, changing his hours to ensure he wouldn't cross paths with her. He told himself it was because she was irrelevant. But the truth gnawed at him every time he glanced at the stabilized reports, her marks, her corrections. Sophia, too, tried to retreat into her studies, scrubbing floors and wiping desks with the same quiet diligence as before. Yet every night, lying in bed, she wondered if he thought of her at all. She chastised herself for caring. But fate was not finished weaving. At week's end, the board cornered Adrian. This fix, brilliant as it is, we need documentation. How exactly was the error identified? One member pressed. Adrian's jaw clenched. It was handled internally. Another frowned. Handled? Vance, if you can't provide a technical trail, investors will panic. His silence gave him away. Sophia happened to be cleaning near the conference wing when she overheard. Her heart raced. They didn't know it was her, and he wasn't telling them. A part of her felt insulted. Invisible again. Another part felt relieved. Did she want to be dragged into his high-stakes world? That night, as rain slicked the streets, she lay awake staring at the cracked ceiling of her room. Her mother's words echoed. Men like him don't see us. But hadn't he? Even for a fleeting moment. Adrian, in his penthouse, poured himself a drink he didn't want. His city stretched below, all lights and glass, but none of it brought him peace. He remembered her again, the defiance in her eyes, the steadiness of her voice. He told himself it meant nothing. That's what resistance looked like for him, drowning in denial, insisting she was nobody, even as her memory haunted him. And somewhere across the city, Sophia whispered to herself in the dark, "You don't belong in his world. Don't even think about it." But deep inside, a small voice asked, "Why not? Have you ever tried to downplay someone who shook your world, just to protect your pride? Or resisted stepping into something new because fear told you not to?" Share your story below. The following week, Adrian's assistant knocked timidly on his office door. "Mr. Vance," she said, voice hesitant. "The board, they're demanding transparency on the fix. They want the analyst who caught it to present at next Friday's review." Adrian's jaw tightened. "I told them it was handled." The assistant swallowed. "Sir, they don't believe it came from you. They think you're covering for someone. If we don't comply, we risk investor confidence." Adrian's chest burned. He hated being cornered. More than that, he hated what the truth meant. To protect his empire, he had only one option: bring her into the spotlight. That evening, Sophia was mopping near the lobby when two men in suits approached. "Miss Alvarez." She blinked, gripping the mop handle. "Yes. You've been requested in Mr. Vance's office." Her stomach dropped. She followed them, heart pounding, as the elevator climbed floor after gleaming floor. When the doors opened, Adrian was waiting, arms crossed, expression carved from stone. "Sit," he commanded. Sophia's chin lifted slightly. "I'm working. You're working for me now." His tone was sharp, but beneath it, something restless flickered. He explained the board's demands. Sophia listened, her face shifting from surprise to disbelief. "You want me to pretend I'm part of your team?" she asked. No, his eyes locked onto hers. "I want you to be part of my team." She laughed, shaking her head. "I clean floors. I take night classes. I don't belong in your boardroom." "You belong," Adrian said firmly, leaning closer, "because you saw what none of them did. And if you don't present this, everything collapses." Sophia froze. The weight of his words pressed on her. He wasn't asking. He was admitting he needed her. The days that followed were filled with tension neither could escape. Adrian assigned her a temporary workspace just outside his office. She arrived with notebooks and a second-hand laptop, her cart tucked discreetly in the corner. At first, the atmosphere was prickly. "Don't touch those files," Adrian snapped one morning. Sophia shot him a glare. "Maybe if you labeled them better, no one would have to." Another time, She brought him coffee without thinking. He stared at it suspiciously. "What is this?" "Fuel," she said simply, sipping hers. He arched a brow. "You're awfully bold for someone in your position. And you're awfully cranky for someone with all the money in the world," she shot back. Silence stretched. Then, to her shock, his mouth twitched like he was fighting a smile. The friction between them became magnetic. Adrian found himself listening for the sound of her typing, glancing up whenever she scribbled notes. He caught details he shouldn't notice. The way she chewed her pen when concentrating, the small scar on her wrist, the quiet hum when she worked. Sophia, too, saw beyond the armor. She noticed the shadows under his eyes, the way his hand tightened around a pen when deep in thought, the rare softness when he forgot to guard himself. He wasn't just ruthless CEO Adrian Vance. He was a man carrying invisible weight. One late night, they worked alone as the city lights flickered below. Sophia rubbed her temples. "These projections are a mess." Adrian leaned over her shoulder, his cologne sharp and unfamiliar. "You missed a decimal." She smirked, not looking up. "And you missed 3. Their eyes met. For a moment, neither spoke. The tension wasn't anger anymore. It was something quieter, more dangerous. Adrian pulled back abruptly, clearing his throat. "Get some rest. We start early tomorrow." Sophia nodded, but her heart raced. By week's end, they had become an odd team. Banter mixed with long silences. Clashes softened into reluctant respect. She saw the cracks in his perfection. He saw the brilliance hidden in her humility. Both would deny it if asked, but something was shifting. Have you ever been forced to work with someone you swore you couldn't stand, only to discover layers you never expected? Did it change how you saw them? The boardroom presentation loomed. Adrian and Sophia spent every spare moment preparing. Her nights filled with scribbled notes and diagrams, his with calls and strategy. But in the quiet hours between tasks, their walls began to slip. One evening, Sophia stayed late again, the hum of the city outside the windows. She was scrolling through spreadsheets when she noticed Adrian staring at a framed photo on his desk. It was tucked behind files, almost hidden, unlike everything else in his office that screamed display. A little boy with wide eyes, holding a toy plane. The resemblance was unmistakable. "Your son?" she asked softly. Adrian stiffened. He didn't answer at first. His jaw clenched as though holding back something raw. Finally, he said, "My brother, Daniel." Sophia tilted her head. "He looks like you." Adrian's voice lowered, almost unrecognizable. "He was 12 when he died. Car accident. I was 16. I told him I'd watch out for him that day. And I didn't." Sophia's breath caught. She had never imagined Adrian Vance carrying guilt like this. The ruthless CEO, haunted by something so tender, so human. Her instinct was to reach out, but she stopped herself, folding her hands in her lap instead. "That wasn't your fault." His eyes flickered to hers. "It doesn't matter. I still broke the promise." Silence stretched between them, heavy with unspoken grief. Days later, the roles reversed. Adrian walked into the temporary workspace to find Sophia asleep at her desk, her notebook open. He meant to wake her, but his gaze fell on the page filled with personal notes. Not equations or charts, but words. "One day, Mom won't have to scrub floors. One day, she'll rest. One day, I'll be more than invisible." He froze. For the first time, he saw her not as a girl who had fixed his numbers, but as someone carrying weight far heavier than he knew. When she stirred awake, his voice was softer than he intended. "You take care of your mother." Sophia blinked, embarrassed he had read her notes. "Yes. She's been sick for years. I couldn't leave her behind, even if it meant putting my dreams on hold." Adrian studied her, a mixture of admiration and something deeper pulling at his chest. "You gave up your future." She met his gaze steadily. "No, I traded it. For her." The conviction in her voice pierced him. He thought of his own family, fractured by grief and ambition. Her sacrifice shone like a mirror to everything he had lost. The more they learned, the more dangerous it became. Adrian found himself opening up in fragments. The betrayal by a business partner who once had been his closest friend. The emptiness of wealth without trust. Sophia shared bits of her world too. The loneliness of always being underestimated. The longing to be seen not as the cleaner's daughter, but as herself. But with every revelation came risk. One evening, after she explained how she worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, Adrian muttered without thinking, "You deserve better." Sophia's spine stiffened. "Better than what?" "My life. My mother." He faltered. "That's not what I meant." Her eyes flashed. "Maybe you should think before you speak, Mr. Vance. Because my mother's sacrifices made me who I am. Don't you dare look down on that." The air between them burned. He opened his mouth, then closed it, realizing he had crossed a line. For Sophia, it was a wound. No matter how much respect he seemed to show, deep down he still saw the divide between their worlds. And that divide cut like glass. The board meeting loomed closer, but now, beneath their preparation, emotions twisted dangerously. They knew more about each other than they ever intended. And knowing meant caring. And caring meant risk. Do you believe our past wounds make us stronger, or do they hold us back from connecting with others? Which side do you stand on? The day of the board meeting arrived, and for the first time in years, Adrian Vance felt unsettled. His empire had withstood scandals, lawsuits, and betrayals, yet nothing had rattled him quite like the thought of walking into that room with Sofia Alvarez at his side. She stood by the glass doors of his office, wearing a simple blouse and borrowed blazer, hair neatly tied. Nothing about her screamed wealth or privilege, yet she carried herself with a quiet grace that made Adrian's throat tighten. "Ready?" he asked. She gave him a nervous smile. Not even close. For some reason, that honesty made him exhale. "Good. Neither am I." The presentation unfolded with tense precision. Adrian introduced Sophia as the analyst who identified the error. Gasps rippled across the table. Whispers of shock that a cleaner's daughter had saved their multi-million-dollar launch. But when Sophia spoke, her nerves melted into clarity. She explained the miscalculation, the correction, and the results with confidence that surprised even her. Adrian watched the board members shift from skepticism to grudging respect. For the first time in years, pride swelled in his chest. Not for himself, but for her. When the meeting ended in applause, Adrian caught Sophia's eye. She looked relieved, radiant, alive. He almost smiled. Later that night, after everyone had left, Sophia remained behind to collect her notes. Adrian walked over, 2 mugs of coffee in hand. She blinked. "You? Making coffee. Don't get used to it," he muttered, handing her one. She sipped, wincing at the bitterness. "You're terrible at this. And you're ungrateful," he shot back. The banter broke the tension, and for the first time, laughter slipped between them, soft, unguarded, startling. Sophia leaned back, shaking her head. "You know, you're not as terrifying as you pretend to be." Adrian arched a brow. "Careful, Alvarez. You're ruining my reputation." Her smile faded into something gentler. "Maybe your reputation isn't who you really are." The words pierced deeper than she knew. He looked away, his chest tightening. Over the next week, their rhythm shifted. Work sessions bled into late-night talks. She teased him about his unhealthy eating habits. He insisted on ordering dinner for them both. She told him stories of her mother's stubborn kindness. He confessed the silence of his penthouse sometimes felt unbearable. One evening, rain poured against the windows as they sat reviewing documents. The power flickered, plunging them into temporary darkness. Sophia gasped softly, her hand brushing his in the sudden void. When the lights returned, she pulled back quickly, cheeks flushed. Adrian didn't move. His gaze lingered, heavier than before. "Does the silence scare you?" he asked quietly. She hesitated. "Sometimes. Because in silence, you can hear everything you're afraid to face." Their eyes locked, unspoken truths passing between them. He wanted to reach for her hand, but he clenched his fist instead. She wanted to ask what haunted him, but she bit her tongue. The bond was fragile, but it was real. The next morning, Sophia brought him coffee, actually drinkable this time. He smirked as he took a sip. "Better," he admitted. "See? You can learn from me," she teased. He chuckled softly, and she froze. She had never heard him laugh like that before. Not bitter, not mocking, but genuine. It was the sound of a man remembering what it felt like to live. For a fleeting moment, it felt like something more than survival was possible, maybe even love. But fragile things break the easiest. Have you ever shared an unexpected moment of laughter or warmth with someone you thought you'd never connect with? Did it change how you saw them forever? The following week, Adrian's empire was buzzing with whispers. Word had spread about Sofia Alvarez, the cleaner's daughter who had saved a multi-million-dollar launch. Some called it genius. Others called it a publicity stunt. Reporters sniffed for a story. Investors wanted proof she was more than a fluke. The pressure was suffocating. Adrian shielded Sofia as best he could, but he was unraveling. Board members questioned his judgment, implying he'd lost control. For a man who had built his image on perfection, the suggestion was poison. It came to a head late one night. They were alone in his office again, reports scattered between them. Sofia leaned over the table, pointing at a figure. If we restructure this section, the projections will stabilize. Adrian rubbed his temples. It's not that simple. It is, she pressed. You're just not willing to admit it because it wasn't your idea. His head snapped up, eyes blazing. Careful. She flinched at his tone, but she didn't back down. You care more about your pride than about fixing what's broken. That's the problem. The words struck deeper than she knew. His brother's face, his partner's betrayal, every failure he'd buried. Suddenly, it was all there, raw and exposed. You think you know me? His voice was low, dangerous. You're a janitor's daughter who stumbled into something far bigger than you. Don't pretend you understand the weight I carry. Sofia froze. The words sliced through her chest. For weeks, he made her feel seen, equal. And in one cruel moment, he had stripped it away, reducing her to the very thing she'd spent her life fighting against. Her voice trembled, but her gaze held steady. And I thought you were different. She gathered her notes, shoving them into her bag with shaking hands. Adrian reached for her arm, regret already flashing across his face. Sofia, wait. But she yanked away. No, I won't be invisible again. Not to you. Her footsteps echoed as she stormed out, leaving him staring at the door, his chest hollow. The next morning, her desk outside his office was empty. The coffee mug she always brought sat cold and forgotten. Adrian tried to focus on contracts and numbers, but every line blurred. He replayed his words again and again. He had seen the hurt in her eyes as she left. He had caused it. For a man who never apologized, the weight of silence was unbearable. Sofia, meanwhile, poured her energy into cleaning shifts and caring for her mother. She told herself she was done with Adrian Vance. He was a man of glass towers and sharp edges. He would never truly see her. But at night, lying awake, the echo of his laugh haunted her. The genuine one, soft and unguarded. She hated how much she missed it. Adrian stood at his penthouse window days later, staring at the city. He thought of her resilience, her defiance, her fire, and the words he had thrown like weapons. Janitor's daughter. He clenched his fists. He had built an empire, but in doing so, he had destroyed the one fragile thing that had felt real. For the first time in years, Adrian Vance questioned whether all the power in the world meant anything if it left him alone. Have you ever said something in anger you can never take back? Did pride destroy something precious in your life? Adrian Vance sat alone in his penthouse. Lights dimmed, cities spread out like a sea of diamonds below. The empire he had built towered around him. Glass, steel, silence. Yet for the first time in decades, it felt like a cage. Her absence was everywhere. The quiet hum of typing that no longer filled his office. The coffee mug that wasn't waiting on his desk. The laughter that had briefly softened his world. He replayed the moment again and again. His voice, sharp as a blade. Janitor's daughter. The look in her eyes before she walked out. Betrayal, disappointment, hurt. For a man who prided himself on control, regret was an unfamiliar weight. But it pressed on him now, heavy as stone. Across the city, Sofia folded laundry in silence, her mother humming softly in the next room. She tried to bury herself in ordinary tasks, but her heart refused to quiet. Adrian's words still echoed, raw and stinging. He had reminded her of every time she'd been dismissed, overlooked, diminished. Yet what cut deepest wasn't the insult itself. It was that she had let herself believe he was different. And worse, she had let herself care. She closed her eyes, clutching a worn t-shirt to her chest. Fool, she whispered to herself. But the tears came anyway. Days bled into nights. Both moved through routines like shadows of themselves. Adrian attended meetings, but his mind wandered. Sophia scrubbed floors, but her hands shook when she thought of his face. Each fought the same war: pride against longing, fear against truth. Adrian's pride told him to let her go, to bury her memory, like he had buried everything else that hurt. But his heart rebelled, whispering that for the first time, he had found someone who saw him. Sophia's fear told her to stay away, to protect herself, to never let a man like him wound her again. But her heart remembered the nights of laughter, the way he had listened when she spoke, the glimpses of a man she believed he could be. One evening, Adrian stood in his office long after everyone had gone. Papers littered his desk, but his eyes were fixed on the empty chair across from him, the chair she used to fill. His chest ached. He realized then that his empire could crumble and he would rebuild it. But if he let her go, if he let pride win, he would never recover. That night, he made his choice. Meanwhile, Sophia sat on the balcony of her apartment, city lights flickering beyond the cracked railing. Her mother's voice floated from inside. "You've been quiet lately, mihija. Are you sure you're all right?" Sophia forced a smile. "I'm fine, Mama." But she wasn't fine. Her heart was restless, tugging at her every time she closed her eyes. She whispered into the night, barely audible, "Why can't I just forget him?" Because she didn't want to. She sighed, realizing she too had a choice: stay hidden in fear or risk believing in something more. The decision hung heavy in both hearts. Two souls, worlds apart, standing at the edge of vulnerability. The question was no longer whether they would find each other again. The question was whether they would choose to. If you were in Sophia or Adrian's place, would you swallow your pride and reach out, or protect yourself and walk away forever? What would you choose? Rain slicked the streets outside Vance Industries, the city glowing beneath storm clouds. Adrian stood in the lobby, ignoring the curious stares of employees as he adjusted his tie. For once, not as armor, but as courage. He had made his choice. For days, he had fought the instinct to bury his regret. But tonight, he wasn't Adrian Vance, ruthless CEO. He was just a man who had broken something precious and was willing to risk everything to mend it. He walked out into the rain, car keys forgotten, his stride determined. There was only one place he needed to be. Sophia was finishing a late cleaning shift when she heard the knock at her apartment door. She frowned, wiping her hands on a rag, expecting a neighbor. When she opened it, her breath caught. Adrian stood there, rain dripping from his hair, suit soaked through. He looked nothing like the polished giant of the boardroom. His eyes were raw, unguarded. "Adrian," she whispered, stunned. For a moment, neither spoke. The sound of rain filled the silence between them. Then his voice cracked low. "I was wrong." Her chest tightened. He stepped closer, his hands trembling slightly. "The words I said, I can't take them back. But they weren't the truth. The truth is, you're the only person who's ever seen me. The only one who's ever made me want to be more." Sophia swallowed hard, her defenses warring with her heart. "Do you have any idea how much you hurt me?" His gaze didn't waver. "Every day since you left, I've felt it. And I'll keep feeling it if you walk away now. But I couldn't live with myself if I didn't at least tell you." His voice faltered. "I need you, Sophia." Her eyes burned. She wanted to stay angry, to hold onto the shield of pride. But his sincerity, the man stripped bare before her, shattered her resistance. Slowly, she whispered, "Then prove it. Don't just need me. Choose me." Adrian's chest heaved, and for the first time, he let the silence hold. Then, without hesitation, he dropped to one knee, right there in the hallway of her modest apartment building, rainwater pooling beneath him. Sophia gasped. "Adrian, I can't promise I'll never make mistakes again," he said, voice steady. "But I can promise I'll never stop fighting to see you, to respect you, to love you. Not because you fix my company, but because you fix me." Her tears spilled, falling fast. She reached for his hand, pulling him to his feet. "You ridiculous man," she whispered, laughing through her sobs. "You didn't have to kneel in a puddle." He chuckled softly, relief breaking across his face. "I'd kneel in worse if it meant earning you back." And then, finally, she let herself close the distance. Their lips met in a kiss that tasted of rain, salt, and second chances. Weeks later, whispers spread again through Vance Industries. But this time, not about scandal. About the woman who walked beside Adrian Vance, not behind him. About the cleaner's daughter who became the partner of a CEO. Some mocked, some doubted. But Adrian and Sophia didn't care. They worked side by side, building something stronger than numbers or empires. Trust, respect, love. One evening, as they sat together reviewing a proposal, Adrian glanced at her with a rare smile. "Remember when I told you I'd give you $300 million if you fix that mess?" Sophia arched a brow. "I remember." He leaned closer, his tone warm. "You fix me instead, and that's worth far more." Her laughter rang through the office, bright and unbreakable. Months later, Sophia's mother sat in a sunlit garden, healthier than she'd been in years, thanks to Adrian ensuring she had the best care. Watching them, Adrian helping her mother with flowers, laughter in his eyes, Sophia felt a peace she had never known. She thought back to the day he had snapped at her, dismissing her, and the day she had stood her ground. How close they had come to missing this. All because of pride, fear, and pain. Now she knew. Love doesn't always arrive gently. Sometimes it crashes in, demanding risk, demanding choice. And when you choose it, everything changes. Do you believe love can truly transform people, even the hardest, most guarded hearts? Or do some walls never come down? Share your thoughts below.